Hello and welcome to this edition of the Tillage Edge with me, Shay Phelan. This is your regular update for all your tillage news and advice. As harvest is fast approaching, I caught up with three of our advisors in the field to see how the crops are looking for this harvest. So I talked to Conor O'Callaghan in County Dublin, Martin McCullough in Donegal, but first I caught up with Michael McCarthy and I asked Michael when did he think the harvest would begin in County Cork.
I would think she's somewhere around the 10-day mark, I have a feeling. In areas like Kinsale there, especially where they would have the early planted Jayu variety. Some of that went in kind of late September, and it's getting very close now at this stage. So I would expect that to be the first we'll see. A week to 10 days time, depending on weather, of course. I suppose the only one thing is, up the country, especially in Oak Park last week, they got some scorching hot days. We didn't seem to get those really scorching, intensely sunny days down here, so that might have slowed ripening down a small bit. But I would think, Shay, that it would be fair to say about a week to 10 days time, people will start harvesting away the Jayu.
So it'll be more or less normal timing then, Michael, in terms of start.
Normal timing, yeah. It's not going to be earlier or later than the other year.
Yeah, and in terms of the winter crops in general, Michael, what sort of a season have they had for the different crops that you're seeing down in Cork?
I suppose very mixed, Shay. We started the year and it was just atrociously wet. And then it got very cold, and then it got dry, and then it got very wet again. So we've kind of had a bit of everything. For the most part, I think that winter barley, if we stick to winter barley has great potential. There are problems reported, but they're not the majority of cases out there. Like there is, bits of blind grains floating around the place, especially with the varieties that would have, we'll say, eared out a bit earlier, the likes of Valerie, which would be that bit kind of earlier in the season to ear out, that may have gotten caught with a bit of frost issues there in May and stuff like that. But then there's the odd bit of fusarium reported in Valerie as well, closer to the coast. But for the most part, winter barley has great potential. It was a reasonably good season, I suppose. They what we lacked in growth earlier in the year, it caught up well later.
Yeah.
Winter wheat is looking great for the most part. There are crops of winter wheat in Cork that got, Septoria has really taken hold. And we're seeing Septoria up on the flag leaf where we normally wouldn't be seeing it this early in the season. But I suppose we're more looking at kind of spray timing issues there, Shay, than anything. I think the T1s were well timed at that third last leaf fully emerged, but the T2s, the flag leaf spray, may have went on a bit late because spraying conditions just were very, very scarce in May there when we were trying to put them on, So in some circumstances, I know that, flag leaf sprays went on almost when the boots were opening, so it was very, very late. And those crops now are showing a lot of Septoria. How that will affect yield, I'm not terribly sure yet. It probably will have some impact, but I don't think it will have a huge impact because weather subsequent to that has been quite good, So that kind of might have halted the Septoria spread better than anything. And winter oats have good potential too. There's very few crops out there that have suffered from the frost in May. But I suppose the only thing to note is that winter oats is very much a minority in Cork this year. That what oats we have is kind of spring oats more than anything.
Okay, so and the outlook, I suppose, in general for the winter crops is a lot better than it would have been 12 months ago. So
yeah, it is. A lot of people are happy with their crops,
Yeah, and yeah. I suppose, Michael, in terms of differences between that and in the Midlands, I know certainly up around here it was different. There would have been different challenges, I suppose, up around the Midlands for crops this year.
There would have been, Shay, like I said, we had a huge Septoria challenge in winter wheat this year. But I know, hearing from my colleagues up the country, that they would have had a huge yellow rust challenge. And as we know, yellow rust can be a significantly, bad disease early in the season like that. So no year goes by without its challenge, but it's definitely showing us, IPM is really coming out in terms of variety selection and everything. There are varieties of winter wheat out there now that kind of we have to call time on and say we can't really grow these anymore. Do you know what I mean? So there's varieties down here that we can't grow because of Septoria, but equally there's varieties that you guys can't grow up there because of the yellow rust issue.
So as you say, it's IPM approach, is knowing what the characteristics of the different varieties are before you choose a variety at all, isn't it?
Exactly.
Yeah. If I can go then to Martin McCullough is our advisor up in Donegal. Martin, how have the winter crops come through this year for you guys up there?
We'd probably be the same as Michael in Cork there, as in like wet weather diseases are usually our issue up here. But look, most crops, the vast majority of crops went into ground, went in fairly good conditions at the back end of last year. So they got a good enough start and looked at a hard winter, and they've improved a lot now this spring or whatever. Disease issue, like you're always afraid to say it, we don't have a huge issue now with diseases this year. Like winter barley, like Rinko, just wasn't a major issue. Winter wheat, and same again. Septoria, we haven't had such a major issue with it, but it'd be more of a minority crop now compared to winter barley up here. Funny enough, Michael mentioned yellow rust. We'd never have rust up here, but there was an incidence of yellow rust in Bennington or whatever up here this year. But look, the crops are looking well, very good potential. Same with winter oats. They come over the winter very well, and they're looking very well now at the minute.
I know you would generally have problems with, say, like some manganese. Has manganese issues been an issue for you this year?
As always, like, manganese and zinc, getting it on when it's needed is vital. Like, but most of the growers are well attuned to that now at this point in time, But look, the growers in Donegal are very well used to, we're in a good situation now at the minute, but the next few weeks will be the issue for us,
And getting those crops harvested is always a potentially risky time.
No, and just we'll probably be about a week, 10 days, 2 weeks later than Cork. They're starting to harvest too. It'll probably be towards the end of the month, maybe before crops are ripe to go, because we haven't had scorching dry weather for any length of time at all either. It's been sort of cloudy and sunny is the best sort of weather we've been getting the past few weeks. So it's all to play for the next couple of weeks, yeah.
Conor O'Callaghan is an advisor in Concealy in Dublin. Conor, just a word from yourself. How are winter crops looking there in the northeast?
Thanks, Shay. Crops are looking well at the moment. There's great potential in crops there, winter crops of wheat, especially they're looking very well. We had lowish levels of septoria during the main growing season, but our biggest problem was the rust problem. High levels of rust were noted in many crops, especially the rust-prone varieties, the Benningtons, the JB and the Thorpe. Was very kind of difficult to control it, but in saying that, look, we'll have to see what way the yield. The other crops, Graham, Costello, and Conross, look very well. They're all still relatively green. This weather that we're after having now in the last maybe 4 or 5 days may just let septoria kind of creep in, as some of the fungicide programs kind of may run out of steam in the next couple of weeks. But overall, wheat is looking very well. Barley has filled relatively well. It's just kind of starting to take on the into the ripening stage. Is underway. I expect we might be cutting maybe in 3 weeks. It doesn't look like there'll be much early winter barley cutting in the northeast. Maybe on 1 or 2 places that maybe on a side of hill, maybe dryish ground. But no, their winter crops are looking well, Shay.
In terms of spring crops, Martin, then I know a lot of spring barley is the biggest crop in Donegal. How is that looking this year?
Yeah, well, I'm not sure if we dodged the bullet this year, but we I remember I was on a call with the other tillage advisors around the country. That I think it was about the 15th of April. I just take back, and the boys in Wexford were looking for rain because 90% of the crops were sown and they were sort of getting a bit droughty at that stage. And we only started really the vast majority of spring crops. We only got going here about the 12th to 13th of April. 12th to 13th of April start sowing them because we had a very wet 2 or 3 weeks between that and Patrick's Day. But the weather conditions did pick up a little bit after that, so like the crops got a good enough start, and at this point in time, they're looking very well as well. No major disease issues in like spring oats or spring barley, So just look, it's only half time with that as well. Like, but we'll see what happens. We're in a good position at the minute, but look, the next few weeks will tell the tale.
So the crops are promising looking then, I suppose, for Donegal is probably the best way to put it.
Potential is good at the moment. Yeah.
Okay, Conor, over to you then in terms of how do spring crops look in the northeast? I know you had problems with drought there earlier on in the season. Has that affected crops up there, do you think, much?
Drought has a little bit of an issue maybe early on, trying to get crops to establish evenly. But once the rain kind of came, we got a bit of moisture, crops got going. They tillered extremely well in most cases, and therefore have high numbers of ears and heads per metre squared. So there is a good potential for a good crop of spring barley this year. Disease levels were relatively low. All things considered, they look well. They look promising. Beans, same thing. Beans looks well. We had little bits of problem with chocolate spot, maybe downy mildew early on, and they seem to have come through that. Chocolate spot starting and is there on the lower leaves, is starting to creep up up along the upper leaves, the upper canopy. There's good numbers of pods. Pods aren't that low. They're a nice height to be able to get the header in underneath it when it comes to harvest. And there's a range of pod numbers per plant, anywhere from 14, 15 up as far as the high 20s in some cases of pod counts in some beans. So it's looking good. So hopefully the weather can stay with us now, and these crops will yield well.
And likewise, Michael, in Cork and the south, how do spring crops perform this year?
The way I describe spring crops this year, Shay, is to me, and I've said this to a couple of people, it's been a year of deficiencies. We've had every deficiency going under the sun pop its head up this year. People got going planting spring barley around Paddy's Day in Cork this year, and then there was about a week's window there, a weather window that people got crops in, and there was a bit of a weather break again, and it was April before they got back. There's a remarkable difference between spring barley planted in March this year versus spring barley planted in April. It seems that the timing for planting spring barley this year was March. April just got very dry and very cold. And some of those April sown crops have struggled since the beginning. They've had germination issues. They've showed up compaction issues where compaction has never showed up before. I was out with a guy yesterday. We were actually looking at beet, and just a phenomenon that showed up is where he knocked a ditch 20 years ago. You can clearly see in the crop of beet where the ditch was this year. It's that kind of year. It's just a cold, hard growing season. So we definitely, you have to say spring barley, and like a good half of our spring barley was planted in April this year, but it has been affected by adverse weather, and it is thinner than it should be, and some fields are very poor. But then again, there's very good spring barley that's been planted early as well. So yourself, the combine will tell all when it gets going. Sure.
Yeah, so it's hard to predict yields in a lot of those crops at the moment, isn't it?
It is. Yeah, it is. Look, I suppose from what we're told, all the research shows that you need thick crops of spring barley to yield. I know it doesn't translate every year, you know what I mean? But if that is the case, then yields will be affected down here with the later crops of spring barley.
And I suppose they're kind of different to the crops up around the Midlands, which would have been badly affected by drought in certain part in April, and again in June, where we had very little rainfall, which definitely staggered growth. But you don't seem to have been affected that much by that type of weather, have you?
No, I suppose, you see, again, it's amazing on this country we can have such varied weather in different regions that are not that far apart. But like when you guys were experiencing very dry weather, we had some very, very, very humid, muggy weather down here, and diseases like Rincosporium were rampant through some spring barley crops, simply because they were, we didn't get opportunities to spray them when we should. Fungicides went on late. Spring barley or Rincosporium was already in the crop. Then we got ideal weather for spreader Rincosporium, So definitely, like it seems every region this year has seen its own different problems.
Yeah, and I was down near part of the world on Monday there, Michael, and I could see a bit of lodging starting to happen in a couple of spring crops down there as well. Is that widespread across the county yet?
It's not. Again, we got rain that weekend, but the rain fell. It fell in one place, and 20 miles away it didn't fall at all. Or fell very, very small amount. But there is bits of lodging around, but it's where you would expect it, Shay. It's those fields that were kind of a bit heavy in the bag, maybe pig slurry applied, stuff like that. Earlier sown crops, and they would be thicker, heavier.
Yeah. Just to move on. Michael, in terms of straw market down there, are you seeing much demand for straw? I'm hearing up this part of the world, there's a good demand for straw at the moment. Are you hearing anything like that down your neck of the woods?
There's a good demand for straw, Shane, and we're only discussing it there earlier with people in that. Since the straw chopping scheme was announced this year, the Straw Incorporation Measure, there seemed to be, a big pull of straw that wasn't already in storage. Okay, so I'd say if you look around to a lot of yards in Cork, you'll find that there's all the straw that was in storage is gone, right? But I don't see straw making bananas money this year. There will be demand. There will be good demand, I suppose. Look, we've seen from the figures with the straw chopping scheme that it's mostly oat and straw and bits of wheat and straw and rape is going in. So I think, the amount of barley straw will be similar to other years. Okay. But there will be good demand for straw, but I don't think it's going to make bananas money either. Shit. That's the way I'd put it.
Yeah, and I think you're right from the point of view, like the scheme, while it was almost fulfilled, the Straw Incorporation scheme, while almost all the land was taken up, it wasn't fully taken up. So obviously, it's probably been more or less offset by the extra area planted in the country this year. So there should be an even enough supply of straw around.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Yeah, and in terms of Martin, up your neck of the woods, I know straw is generally a big part of why guys grow cereals up your neck of the woods. Are you seeing any lift in demand up there, or are markets still fairly stable?
Yeah, no, the straw would be in big demand up here every year, and I know there's, just talking to a couple of growers in the last couple of days, they're getting a lot of pre-orders in already, more than usual. So I just the talk of the Straw Incorporation scheme has seemed to move things on a little bit, and people are making sure they've got their orders in. So a lot of regular customers have placed their orders already. So demand is strong, and its prices should be fairly good this year.
And in terms of grain markets up your way, Martin, did any guys avail of some of the prices that were going earlier on in the season?
No, there wouldn't be. I said it's not a huge option for us up here, so because we're so far from other markets or whatever. So it's not a major issue for us up here.
It's generally a local market you're trading for up there anyway,
yeah,
isn't it?
It's local. Yeah, it's all local market. Yeah.
In terms of the straw market, then, Conor, I mean, a lot of straw up your neck of the woods goes for mushroom compost and all that type of thing. Are you seeing much of a demand for straw up your neck of the woods, and has the other guys, has the Straw Incorporation scheme made much of an impact, do you think?
The Straw Incorporation Measure, I personally, with clients, had maybe a 20% uptake on it, with clients chopping a little bit. Now, they're predominantly chopping maybe the spring barley straw, and any rape growers obviously we're going to chop the rape straw. A lot of them were leaving the wheat because of the good compost, the mushroom straw markets that they have and have built up over the years. So there's still good crops of straw out there. Crops are tall. Winter barley is kind of higher than it normally would, and likewise wheat is the same. So there should be good crops of straw and good bale numbers compared to last year when it was a very poor yield for straw. But markets seem to be there. The composters are looking to buy the straw, so there should be a good market there for the wheat and straw.
And in terms of grain markets, did many guys forward sell or take the opportunity to forward sell earlier on and get decent prices for the grain, do you think?
Yeah, if a good proportion of growers sold. Some growers had sold previously to the good price jump, and then more joined along when the good prices were had back then. Some sold a bit more, but no, there was a good uptake, and obviously now it's dropped back a bit. But no, there was a good uptake when the prices were good for forward selling.
So they're happy now with the prices that they got earlier on.
Yeah, we're looking at things now. They are, and hopefully it'll be a pretty good year. Hopefully, like the crops have the potential to yield well, and hopefully they do, and we should hopefully get a good yield of straw as well.
And likewise, Michael, did you see much of a demand for some of those prices that were forward sold earlier on in the season?
A bit, Shay, but nothing huge. I think, all season we were looking at a kind of a bit of a steady rise. And it has plateaued now very much so. It's actually dipped back a small bit, but I always find whilst grain prices rising, there's going to be very little people will lock in prices. I suppose they're anticipating that it will get higher and higher. But I don't think there's been a lot of forward selling going on. Probably more so with the premium crops like the malting and stuff like that. There would be a share of that going, especially beans. All the beans would be on a forward sold contract, like Dairy Gold down here offering $2.40 a tonne on a forward sold. But as regards feed grain, no, I think a lot of people are leaving it for the harvest price.
And I suppose there is quite a bit of that, but I would suppose that given the price rise as it is already over where prices were last year and the predicted better yields that guys can hopefully achieve this year, the outlook for the harvest is a lot rosier, would you say, than this time last year?
It would be. No, not to negate that costs have gone up too, Shay. Diesel is a good bit dearer than what it was last year. Fertilizer was dearer. There's okay. The costs are gone higher, but I think the higher price of grain will I suppose come in higher again, if you know what I mean. Like it's going to meet those extra costs and more. But like it must be factored into that the cost has gone higher. But I would hope so, Shay. I would hope that this would be financially it will be a better year than last year, I should say.
Okay, thanks for that, Conor, Michael, and Martin. It's hopefully the potential in the crops this year will be able to realise them, and guys will have a good harvest for 2021.
Thanks, Shay.
Thanks, Shay.
That's all for this week. If you like this podcast, please recommend it to a friend or colleague and rate, review, and subscribe on Apple Podcasts or Spotify so you never miss an episode. For more information, log on to teagasc.ie. I'm Shay Phelan. Thanks for listening, and I'll be back again next week with more tillage news and advice.